Good Saturday morning, everyone. Today on Perspectives, we hear about the continuing efforts to eradicate the root causes of racism and how to become intentionally more diverse. Mobile United ramped up efforts to create a dialogue between citizens and law enforcement after several national incidents. They spawned protests against alleged police brutality, especially towards African Americans. The incidents polarized the nation and resonated across the globe. You may remember 7 months ago, citizens gathered in downtown Mobile to protest the death of George Floyd, who died of suffocation during an arrest by Minneapolis police. At one point, tear gas was even used to prevent some people from walking on Interstate 10. Afterwards, police and city officials met with protest organizers at Mardi Gras Park. It was promised that the voices of concern would not be ignored. Mobile United has been dedicated to the goal of diversity and inclusion for more than 40 years. The question remains, though, however, if enough is being done by our civic and community leaders to make that happen. This morning, Mobile United leaders will talk about the 5 major points of discussion: police reform, educational opportunities, finding the root causes of racism, and the climate some call the fatigue of fear for Black and brown children as well as adults. Our guests today are Chris Gibson, Executive Director of Mobile United, and Dr. RAOUL Richardson, a member of the Mobile United Board of Directors. A lot to discuss and share. Perspectives continues after this quick break. Our guests this morning, Chris Gibson, the Executive Director of Mobile United, and Dr. RAOUL Richardson, who is also a Board of Director with the organization. We thank you both for being a part of the discussion this morning. When we talk about your name, Mobile United, it seems all fitting that you would be tackling the issue of diversity and inclusion in the Mobile community. Give us an idea of how that came about. Why did Mobile United decide to tackle that issue here?
Well, honestly, thank you, first of all, for having us here. We really appreciate the opportunity to speak. But Mobile United has been around since the 70s, and it was birthed out of the United Way by a bunch of leaders who wanted to really be proactive post-civil rights and look at ways that people could come around a table and solve the community problems together. So this is something that our organization has been rooted in since the 70s. When Leadership Mobile started in the late 70s, it's something that we do every year programmatically. And since that time, it has evolved, and so our organization has been working with our task force, which used to be our committees, but it's now our task forces, for years. And so we've been meeting monthly since I've been involved with Mobile United since 2009. More recently, and in this year in particular, we've had a lot more to talk about and to think about and figure out how to keep that tradition of bringing diverse population around the table to figure out how we can move the needle on this particular issue.
And of course, this year has been quite a dynamic one as relates to some major changes both in our nation and some things that happen in our nation that have caused also a reciprocal type of response internationally. Dr. Richardson, as you look at what happened in Minneapolis, what happened at Mobile United after that incident, and did that become a catalyst for you all as well?
Yes, absolutely. And again, I echo Chris's sentiments. We thank you for having us here to have an opportunity to explore this particular dialogue. And as Chris indicated, the genesis of our organization is rooted in these kind of deliberative dialogues. The aforementioned experiences that we all shared as a community and globally as well as nationally is rooted in the Ahmaud Arbery, the Breonna Taylor, the George Floyd moments. And I can remember speaking to Chris that weekend and knowing that we had some upcoming meetings and other initiatives that were ongoing that we were seeking to address some of these concerns with, that we really wanted to find a way to give people an opportunity to have that voice in a kind of a protective, not necessarily insulated, but certainly empathetic and sensitive way. And that really kind of gave it wings, and suddenly we found ourselves having people that were external to the task force wanted to participate in the discussions and share their experiences, their feelings, their thoughts, their moments, and more importantly, what things those feelings and emotions represented in terms of actions that we could formulate strategies for our community in a proactive fashion instead of a reactive fashion. So that was something I think was very important.
And you talk about the whole aspect of giving some type of direction to coming to answers for concerns that people have. And of course, when we look at the younger population, they have a different perspective than many of us who have been around for a few years, as far as also wanting something to happen fast and quick. And do you feel that you all are being able to be a resource for that segment of the community as well?
Well, I'll take this one largely because I think the genesis of what caused the formation of Mobile United, for such a time as this, we would not have expected that our efforts 3, 4, 5 years ago would have formulated the relationships necessary to be able to respond in that moment. So the idea of diversity, equity, and inclusion was a big part of what we were already, working with, and in some cases struggling with. And as a result, we had a lot of people at the table that represented, some of the factions of which I find myself inclusive of relative to age, demographic, and things of that sort. So I think that certainly helped to kind of spur the conversation. We made an effort in terms of our diversity inclusion task force to make certain, as Dr. Paul Frazier references all the time, of being conscious of who's not at the table. And so when I was fortunate to kind of take this from the hands of Joelle Billingsley to lead this diversity inclusion effort, we made a concentrated effort to identify what parts and segments of the community weren't present, and then to engage them. And over the years, we've been able to develop relationships with a lot of people and make certain they were at the table. So by the time we got to the stage, this idea that you expressed of the time frames, the expectations people have for how we respond to crisis or emergencies was not necessarily immediately apparent. I think as this really formed and took shape, it really became more of an opportunity for people to share thoughts, ideas, and mechanisms for how we can be better. And that was really the most critical part in terms of being proactive as compared to being reactive to all of the things that we face as a community and a nation.
And Chris, your response on that, because you are someone who's been active prior to and during your time with Mobile United in organizations serving the young people in the community, serving school-age children, as well as even kids in support agency programs who are coming from environments that need more support. Where do you see Mobile United now being a stopgap and to be a place of resource? Yeah,
I think to your point, Eric, that I've noticed, especially younger professionals, they want more immediate response to things. And we have had some of those sentiments echoed in our diversity and inclusion, especially because of the I guess the timing, with Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor and George Floyd, like one after another, and people just being exhausted, just being fatigued, and saying, look, we want something to be done. We don't want to just talk about it anymore. So I understood that because it's a frustration that I share, that I know a lot of people on our committee share, on our board, in the community, and obviously, nationwide and worldwide. What our organization does is we are deliberative dialogue, so we talk as a community and then move to consensus on how to act. So it took us a while, and I had to reiterate quite a few times because there were some younger people that are very action oriented. They just want to do right now. But we had to get through, specifically, I think starting in June, we met every week for at least three months on Zoom, obviously. But there were people who were like, we want something now, we want action. But we just had to really, I think, bring them through the process of how we all as a community talk about the issues and sort of have to figure out what are the things that they would want to see. Like, we can't just act and not know where we want to move to. So we really had to slow down and take a little bit of the time and say, like, what does a just world look like to you? What are the things that you would want to see? What does police reform look like? What does educational reform look like? What are the things that really matter to this task force? And right now we're in the process of having speakers come into our Zoom meetings and give us updates, because again, we can't know where we're going unless we know where we are now. So
let's hold on that point there. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk more, because you have 5 different areas of concern and interest that you'll be addressing those throughout the next year, and even, of course, into a greater period of time. We're going to take a quick break here on Perspectives, our conversations with Chris Gibson and Dr. RAOUL Richardson. We'll have more in just a moment. Welcome back to Perspectives, our conversation this morning with Chris Gibson, Executive Director of Mobile United, and Dr. RAOUL Richardson, who is one of the Board of Director members for the organization as well. You all have 5 areas of concern and interest, and some of the major points that you feel need to be addressed in the community as it relates to dealing with diversity and inclusion. And number 1 is police reform. And I think one of the points that you were making, Chris and Dr. RAOUL, the aspect of finding out where is it we want to go? What is it that we want to see? What does police reform look like in this community as compared to other places around the country? How do you start tackling and dealing with that?
Well, what we've done is engage the police department, leaders in the department who thankfully have been a part of our program, who are through Leadership Mobile. They've been graduates. They're members, very active members of Mobile United, and so we stay in constant dialogue with them before all this had happened. And so it was very easy for us to say, hey, we need you to come sit and talk to this group because they have questions and we have questions, and we need to figure out again where we are before we can figure out how we can get to where we want to be.
How do most people feel about the policing of our community as examples we see in other places? How do they feel overall about what's happening here, and what is it they want to see?
RAOUL?
Wow, that's a lot. Well, firstly, I'd say that, to echo some of what Chris has said, we were already in relationship and conversations with some of those leaders within our community. So it wasn't kind of a crisis management kind of a introduction. So that was helpful, that they were already participating in some of the deliberative dialogue. And certainly there were a number of areas beyond police reform that we identified: education, economic development, things of that sort. But yes, you're right. The tensions of the George Floyd episode, the Ahmaud Arbery, the loss of Breonna Taylor's life, created a heightened level of emotional sensitivity that, of course, really kind of compelled people to action and wanting to see immediate responses and results. And we had to kind of temper that a little bit with, affording people the opportunity to express their emotions within the volatility of that moment, but at the same time, recognizing that we had to be intentional in what a path forward might look like, in an effort to be deliberative and representative of all the members of our community and law enforcement. In terms of expectations, that particular moment in time precipitated a conversation that was being had on the city council level, in which I was asked to be in attendance. And of course, there were a lot of conversations surrounding this idea of defunding the police and other kinds of nomenclature that were kind of pervasive within the media as well as the cultural communities around the nation. And one of the things I think that precipitated my engagement on that level, beyond chairing the Diversity Inclusion Task Force, was this idea that there had been in existence a council that was prescribed by ordinance by the City Council, and then subsequently, by virtue of a lack of interest, a dissipation of the numbers of participants, kind of fell away to the side. And in my talk to the City Council and the Mayor, said that that was a failure of the leadership to suggest that if it was important enough to exist by virtue of ordinance, that we should not allow it to dissipate because you could not maintain the intentions of the people that were participating. And subsequently, my mouth got me into the position where Councilman John Williams suggested that I represent his district in that initiative and reviving that effort. And we've got a terrific number of people that were appointed by all 7 council members. Well, Actually, we're still waiting for Councilman Davies to assign someone to the team, but Mayor Stimson, we encouraged him to assign someone to the council, and we're excited about their participation. And these folks are dedicated and committed to establishing relationship with law enforcement, building a bridge between our community and the law enforcement professionals represented in those professional organizations, and affording people in the community an opportunity to have that kind of a positive interaction and discourse. As a part of that process, as the ordinance requires, we've participated in 6 hours of law enforcement training, ride-alongs with the varying precinct commanders, which have all been remarkably outstanding. Just, you know, people can take this for what it's worth, but the fact of the matter is we have some outstanding people operating within law enforcement in our community. That's not to say that there could not be possibly one bad intended person within that group, but every single person I've had any engagement with has been open-minded, starting at the top with
the
Chief Barber and Mobile Police Department Chief Batiste,
right,
who's open to the idea of kind of seeing what that reform would look like and what mechanisms and things can be done to afford people that opportunity. And as I toss it back to Chris, I'd simply say that any members of our community.
Well, let me slide in here, and because you've got some great points in here, and number 2 and number 3, educational and economic opportunities,
yeah,
which a lot of times will lead towards needing police reform because of how people are responding who don't feel they have the educational and especially the economic opportunities. Where are we headed in that direction to make sure that those opportunities are here in the Mobile community for our young people especially?
Well, I'm going to toss it back to Chris, because that was really an important kind of a nexus for us to be able to identify what were the 5 issues that we wanted to address, and Chris was instrumental in helping us to identify them, and then we've kind of invited kind of presenters into the conversation to help us formulate understanding and then a path forward. So Chris, why don't you speak to that?
So we again, during that 3-month period where we met basically every week, we really did have to literally just go through. First, it was just dealing with the heaviness of the riots and everything that was going on. It was very emotionally heavy, and there was a lot of there were tears, there were emotions. It was heavy.
Yeah,
for lack of a better term.
Traumatic.
Yeah, but then after about 3 or 4 weeks, we finally got to that point where we just had to get out of this group. Like, what are the things that we want to see? And obviously, educational opportunities, having a more equitable access to funding for schools, maybe teaching more African American history beyond just 1 month of the year, making sure that history is correct. And so that's one issue we haven't, as the task force, tackled yet. We haven't brought in speakers to address that, but we did address economic opportunities, and we brought Arshanique Kidd from the City of Mobile, the diversity and supplier manager. I'm sorry, that's not the correct title, but she does amazing work in making sure underrepresented communities and minority businesses have a chance at city contracts. We brought in Daryl Randall from the Mobile Area Chamber of Commerce, and we brought in Levy King, who is the president of the Mobile Area Black Chamber of Commerce. And so it's good because they all had different areas of focus that they're working on, and so they got to understand some of the programs and some of the accessibility that they have. Maybe it's a capital, to opportunities to apply at the city. There's a whole slew of different things that we address through having them come and speak to us.
Chris and Raoul, some incredible areas that we need to go even further into, and never enough time to, of course, but take about 30 seconds here and tell us, for those who are watching and listening this morning, how do they get involved if they want to be a part of the meetings as well as making a difference in this community, working in unison with Mobile United?
Wow. Visit us on Facebook.
Yep.
Visit our website. In terms of the police component relative to the Mobile Police Citizens Community Relations Advisory Council, which I'm the president of, reach out to your local council persons and or the mayor's office. We have public meetings on a regular basis. We need the community involved on all of the issues that Chris explored in terms of economic development, education. We need your participation, every member of the community. If you're not at the table presently, we engage need you, we encourage you, we invite you to come and be a part of it.
Well, we thank you both, Chris Gibson, Executive Director of Mobile United, and Dr. RAOUL Richardson, Board Member and President of the other council as well, working with the police reform issue, for being a part of this discussion today. It's almost like voting. If you don't vote, why are you asking questions? Now, Mobile United, they have a area here where you can work to bring about positive change, and we ask them to definitely consider working with you all. Thank you both so much for being a part of the discussion this morning on Perspectives.
Thank you, Eric.
Thank you for having us.
And once again, for more information on efforts to promote diversity and inclusion, check out Mobile United's website at mobileunited.org. You can also give them a call at the phone number you see there on the television screen. That's 432-1638. Next Saturday morning on Perspectives, a landmark exhibition at the History Museum of Mobile. 22 objects, unexpected and compelling. They help us weave through more than 300 years of Mobile history, from the pre-colonial period to the 21st century port. We'll hear how we can discover new and familiar stories. Please join us here next Saturday morning for that and for Perspectives as we discuss important issues as well as seeking solutions. Now, if you have any ideas of topics you'd like for us to address, drop it to us at perspectives@fox10tv.com. I'm Eric Reynolds. Have a great week.